It's been a long time coming. The Texas A&M preview. This is the early line on that. It's actually moved. I think it was 7.5 at one point when it opened. Texas is favored by 6 points on the road. The over-under here is at 48.5. This is a game people have been looking forward to since 2011. So really crazy that we've had to wait this long for this game. 13 years. This is a game that's been played 1915 to 2011 was played every year other than I think like major world wars, and even then I think it might have been played. So we finally get it back. Texas won the last meeting obviously on a Justin Tucker walk-off field goal, 27-25. I don't know if I trust our kicker this time to do that because he's been shaky. We might have mentioned that. We should have mentioned that in the bat. He hasn't been great this year. But Gerald, what do you think about this game?
I think it's going to be wild. I mean, there's no two ways. I still remember where I was in 2011. I was hiding behind a recliner, and my aunt was looking at me like I'm crazy because she's from New York and she doesn't get it, right? Like, this is the game that so often defines so much of the season, right? And it's doubly so this year, right? Being able to brag to your friends at the water cooler or be able to wear your polo and give somebody grief in HEB is one thing, right? But the simple fact that, like, if Texas can go in and beat A&M on their home field, they're effectively guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff. There has never been, at least in modern history, right? There's never been a game with stakes like this for Texas, right? Being able to say, it harkens back to, I remember the early 2000s when whoever won in Dallas was going to go to the Big 12 championship and effectively play for a national championship. This is that same type of vibe, but a little bit more because it's A&M. We haven't played it in 13 years. We've all been Twitter warriors about it for a decade and a half, effectively, right? So now we could say when the rubber meets the road, and especially as a Texas fan, we think about it, A&M had a 13-year head start in the SEC. If Texas can go in to their home field and beat them, they will play for the SEC championship in their first year, something that A&M has been unable to do for 13 years, right? So you'll have this to hang over your biggest rival's head, right? And you can argue about who's your bigger rival, right? I got to see A&M fans more than I see OU fans, so that's a bigger rivalry to me, right? They're both incredible rivalries. They're both folks I love to hate. But like that, to me, it is massive. Now, on the football side of things, I think the game is gonna hinge on the trenches, right? And I've said it before, you're gonna get tired of hearing me say it, but like when you've got a guy like Marcel Reed, can your defense play solid assignment sound football, right? Can your defensive ends hold the edges, right? Can they keep that quarterback contained? Because he's going to beat you with his feet, right? Can the offensive line be able to match up with, I'm going to say it, this outside of Georgia, right? This is probably the best defensive front we've seen and will see throughout the years, right? I hate saying nice things about A&M, but that defensive front, the guys from that massive recruiting class that they bought a few years ago, the ones that stayed, most of them are in the trenches, right? So, like, for me, that's the matchup. Can the Texas defensive line or offensive line match up really well with this stout A&M defensive line? And can this Texas defense take advantage of an offensive line that has taken some time to gel, had some kind of shifts and shakes around, and keep Marcel Reed from getting his feet going? Because if you force Marcel Reed to drop back and pass, he makes mistakes. We've seen that, right? And this Texas defense, number 2 in the country in interceptions, not a mistake, right? You keep that quarterback from getting comfortable, this defense is going to be opportunistic. So, like, to me, that's where the game's going to be won and lost.
100%. And I think the game plan Texas to draw from is the South Carolina one. Like, South Carolina has a very good front. They let them eat. Dylan Stewart had a pretty good game in that. And then also South Carolina has a pretty underrated back end. I think ours is still better. But overall, I mean, the one guy that Texas just has to limit off the edge is Nick Scourton. He's definitely their best pass rusher. His numbers aren't great. Like, I thought they'd be better this year. He only has 5 sacks. But he's still a hell of a player. Like, coming over from Purdue, I think he had 10 plus sacks last year in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And he's still been very productive. He also has 14 tackles for loss. So you have to stop him off the edge. Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner are also good playmakers, but they're more of run stoppers than they are off the edge. Their secondary can be had. You just have to have time. And I think that's where the Quinn factor comes into it. Well, does Quinn Ewers have the ability to step into throws this weekend? If he doesn't, honestly, he shouldn't even be playing. Let's be straight up with that. Like, if he cannot step into throws and step into the pocket, you got to have Arch Manning play. I don't love that. I don't love Arch Manning's first start coming, like real start coming on the road versus Texas A&M. But you have to have some mobility in this game. They're going to get after you. They're going to play above their heads for at least the first half. That's going to happen. We've seen this all the time, guys, where people get ramped up in football games and you're like, where the hell has this come from? Well, guess what? They have 13 years of pent-up energy that's going to be unleashed, and their players are going to feed off that. This crowd obviously is going to give them enough energy to do that, and you're going to have to, I think, early on, just weather the storm. I think that's going to be the thing. If you can stay in this football game, weather the storm early on, you'll be fine because you are the better football team. I think in the second half, you can prove that. But you cannot allow this game to get far away from you in this first half, because this first half, I'm going to say again, it is going to be the most crazy environment any football team walks into all season long. I don't care what the national championship game is or the SEC championship game is, whatever conference game you want to say, no other team will walk into an environment like this. So you just have to weather the storm early on. Hopefully we can do that. And if Quinn Ewers is like 80%, offensive line, can you just keep him upright most of the game so he's not getting hurt later in the game? And the way to do that, run the football. We've been able to do that late in games. Can we do that early in games? Because that is something we have struggled with. Early on, we haven't been able to lean on people. In this game, I think early on, it's going to be the best friend of this offense, of Quinn Ewers, of killing their momentum in this game early on, because they're going to have it just from the straight up, right from the kickoff. Got to be able to run the football and got to be able to take care of the football. I think if you do both those things, I think you kill the momentum early for them. And I think you can go in and honestly win this game pretty easily. But it's going to be, listen, it's easy to say. It's hard to do. I know that. Yeah. So this game's going to be crazy.
Well, and I think there are a couple of advantages that Texas has with that, because, when you talk about the momentum and riding the emotions, right, it's a similar thing you have to manage in the Cotton Bowl in October, right? Like you have to be able to ride that emotional wave. And Texas, I'm going to be honest, like hasn't done a great job of that these last 2 years. It's been very up and down. They settled themselves really well this year, not quite as well 2 years ago, but like they've got some experience doing that. They did it against Michigan. Now Michigan is not a good football team, but they were able to do it in Dallas. They were able to ride that wave. And shout out to Joe in the chat, in the comments, mentioned that like, A&M's going to be without Le'Veon Moss for this game. He's done for the year. So that's a big hit to their run game now. Amari Daniels is still a really good running back. Monitoring the status of Scooby Williams as well. I believe he got hurt in that game over the weekend. So that's one. He's second on the team, I think, behind Stewart for tackles for loss, right? Yeah, so he's second on the team for tackles for loss. So like that's one to watch as well. His status when that injury report comes out on Thursday, I think that's something that Vegas is probably watching pretty closely as well. If you're looking to bet on that, but yeah, I think the other advantage Texas has in this is that I imagine that A&M's game plan is going to be similar to what Arkansas and Kentucky tried to do. Right, they're going to try to keep Texas's offense on the sideline. They're going to try to limit the number of plays that Quinn Ewers and Sark have to dial something up, because. Let's be real. If it's going to be a passing shootout, the advantage pendulum swings way in Texas's favor, right? Because that's not what Marcel Reed can do now. Now I think Marcel Reed has a very high ceiling, and I think in 3 years or maybe 2 years, I'm going to be terrified to play him because he's probably going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the country, right? Because he's got the feet, he's going to develop as a passer. So but right now he's a freshman who relies predominantly on his legs. So I would be shocked if Colin Klein, who his preference is to run the ball, is to slow things down, right? They're going to have a similar plan to what Kentucky and Arkansas both tried to do against Texas. And Texas struggled in the third quarter, but more often than not was able to handle that and put up enough points to get it done. And the defense, again, the Texas defense has seen it before. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I am kind of a pessimist by nature. Maybe that's just because I launched my content creation career in the middle of Charlie Strong's Texas. So that's part of why maybe it's just like a hit dog holler situation. But ultimately, I think Sark's going to have the right scheme for it. And I think the game Colin Klein calls is going to have a big deal with how this game turns out, because if A&M is able to keep Texas offense off the field, no matter how good your defense is, when they're gassed, they're gassed.
Yeah, 100%. And it's going to be interesting if Mike Elko at all tries to play any 3 high safeties in this game.
Yeah.
Because the only team that's done that is Arkansas, and it worked. Like it definitely threw a wrench into things, and Texas has struggled with that. We kind of figured it out later on last year, but then I think Sark, like he even said at SEC Media Days, what's the difference between SEC and Big 12? And he says, I think SEC schemes it up a little bit less and just lets their players play. And he even said, I think I don't have to worry about 3 high. Well, he got it in a game this year, and I think it caught him off guard a little bit. But there's no excuse now. You've seen it. It cannot catch you off guard in this game. That has to be talked about in like the pre-game meetings leading up to this game of like, hey, what happens if they decide to go 3 high safety? Because guess what? Mike Elko wants to win this football game. It doesn't matter how it's done. He just wants to win the game, get in the SEC championship game, and possibly get into the college football playoff. So he doesn't really care. He'll put his ego aside. I really believe that for this game. And if he says, hey, listen, they struggle with 3 high safety, we're going to give them 3 high safety the whole night. How is Sark going to deal with that game plan wise? And then Quinn Ewers was not the most effective in that game because he missed a lot of underneath throws that he usually makes. That was the big thing that I noticed. Will he hit those throws in this game? Because usually under like 20 yards and under, he's probably one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the country in short and intermediate throws. It's the long range throws that he struggles with. So if they're going to play 3 high, you're going to have to hit those. Those are the ones they're giving you. You have to hit them.
Yeah. And I think the other way to limit the 3 high looks, like you said, is to run the ball really well, right? If you can't generate, if you're able to cram the box with one fewer guy in the box, then that's going to swing the pendulum to the defense, right? So if Texas is able to run the ball, it's going to force Elko to bring one of those safeties down in the box to try to limit that. Go look at A&M splits for running games and wins and losses, right? It is one of the starkest differences I've seen. In wins, they're giving up 95 yards on the ground a game. In losses, 217, right? Like that to me, I've never seen a wider split on wins and losses running the ball than that. It's like that to me, they gave up like 286 a couple of weeks ago, right? Looking at the 168 against Auburn, 286 against South Carolina, 198 against Notre Dame. Like if you can run the ball, if you can generate some offense on the ground, they can't keep up, right? So like that to me, I think the game ball is going to go to either A&M's run defense or Quintravian Reiser and Jaden Blue. Like that to me is going to be the difference in this game.
Yeah, 100%. And just don't fumble. That's do not fumble. You cannot give the ball away. And honestly, if you do that and you just do what you've been doing the last 2 weeks on the ground, I think you'll be fine. They've done pretty well running the ball on the ground. It's just been putting the ball on the ground. That's been the biggest issue. And then Quinn, can you hit 1? I need 1 deep ball. I don't need 3. I don't need 4. I need 1. You need to have 1 because again, that also softens it up in the run game for the run game as well. And all the underneath stuff too makes it easier. And we just haven't hit that. We tried it in Arkansas a couple times when they did give us 2 high safeties. Didn't hit them. We tried it a couple times in Kentucky. Couldn't hit them. Just hit 1. We need 1. We hit 2 in Alabama. I'm asking for 1.
You know what? I'll take 1. I'll even take a half one. Like I'll just 15 yards. I don't even need 30 yards. Give me 15 yards. That'll be great.
Okay, so let's get to our predictions for this game. I'll let you go first.
Oh man, I am a terrible bet. I lost all my lunch money one week in high school betting, and I haven't done it since. So I'm terrible at it. But I think, you know, when you look at the line, right, they get the 3-point home bump. So this is probably a 9 or 10 point game, I think, on a neutral site. I think that when we think about the line, I probably got Texas like 28-17 is probably where my I'm not going to bet on it, right? I don't bet anyways, but this is what I'd stay far away from. But I think 28-17 feels right to me. I think, you know, Marcel Reed is too talented, too quick of a quarterback to not put up points. But I think Texas probably has enough offense to overcome that.
I'm going to go 29-21. So kind of a weird score, but it's first time playing. Why not put up a weird score for this game? So I'm going to go 29-21. I think Texas controls this game, especially in the later portions of the game. I think early on it's going to be a dogfight. Like I said, I think all that energy, all that momentum just from kickoff is going to be with A&M. But I think, like you said, Texas does a pretty good job of weathering the storm, and I think they will. And I think they'll pull away late, make it a 29-21 game. And I even think it'd be like probably a late score from A&M. I could see 29-14. They put on a late score. So I'm going to go 29-21. I'm really bad at predicting games early in the week. If you ask me day of, I'm usually pretty good actually, but I'm terrible. Like later in the week, I start to get like a gut feeling and my mind and gut kind of sync up and then I get it right. Whereas right now I'm just running off of pure hatred and emotion towards Texas A&M. So I'm going to go 29-21 Texas.
I'm legitimately like 5-1 on the year against the spread. So like, do not bet any of my picks, please.
No, I'm not great at betting Texas either. I try to stay away from it. I'm decent at, I've gotten actually pretty good at betting the SEC as a whole, but I'm terrible at picking like Texas usually in these games spread wise. But I'm going to go 29-21 and hold my breath. We'll get to the comments real quick before we get out of here. Corey says 31-14. I could see that. That'd be a really good win if we could win 31-14.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that in my mind is if it turns into a shootout, I think there's an opportunity for Texas to put up some points, right? If A&M can't put up those long drives, I think Texas has an opportunity to put that defense on skates a bit. So I think, yeah, that would be great. It is a home game for A&M. That I think was one of the concessions I think that the SEC maybe made to them to get them to stop kicking their feet when Texas came in, was to let them have the first one. And you know what? The last one was played there. First one back is played there. So you know what? Beating them back-to-back games on their home field will feel great.
It would have been better if they did beat Auburn. Then we could have beat them 3 times in a row the last 3 times we played them, because we would have played them again in the SEC championship game.
Fair.
But Corey, I'm more worried about the Texas special teams giving up a score than anything at this point. I mean, my God, can we just make a routine catch on the punt return is what I'm asking for.
I don't know if it's a Jeff Banks thing, because Xavier Worthy was doing it last year. Every time Texas goes out to field the punt, I'm like a quarter inch taller because I clinch up so hard. Like, I am terrified. Xavier Worthy did it last year, Silas Bolden, and again, it's part of what makes him dangerous as a returner, but dangerous for both teams, right? I need some peace in my life.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically, there was one, I think it was in the Arkansas game, where he just decided he caught it and literally fell on his back as he's catching. I'm like, you can just stand up and catch it. You don't have to do something crazy every time you get the ball, like off the hop, turning around, spinning, falling down, catching it. He does all sorts of crazy stuff he does not have to do. Catching it with 3 guys around you, I just don't understand it.
I spent some Saturdays this fall watching my 7-year-old's flag football team, and sometimes it feels like that. I'm like, just run straight, right? Just grab the ball and run straight. Like, just north and south, please.
And then Burt Auburn, consistency. That's what I'm asking for. Can you be – I need you dialed in 95% of the time from 40 and under. If you can get 95% of your kicks 40 and under, I'm fine with that. If you want to go less than that, obviously, let's say 80% of the time, 40 to 45, I'd be cool with that. Like, he's not even doing that at this point. He's missed a lot of kicks that I think he should make. I mean, he made them last year. He only missed 1 or 2 kicks all of last year. He made like 17 or 18 in a row at one point. So just totally like Jekyll and Hyde from last year to this year. He's cost himself a lot of money. He probably would have got drafted last year.
He made from 49, missed from 47. I don't get it.
And the 47 wasn't even close. Like, right off the foot, it's off by 3 yards to the right. So, yeah, it's bad. Yeah, Jeff Banks watched Kavontae Turpin yesterday. Yeah, he might have. Hey, Kavontae Turpin wasn't doing that in college, though. Kavontae Turpin was catching the punts, returning them for touchdowns, and he wasn't doing any crazy stuff on the catch. He would just catch them and go.
I'm glad we don't have to play Kavontae Turpin anymore. That's my only commentary on that as a Texas fan.
Yeah, I'm glad that game versus TCU that one year, 50-7?
Yeah.
I mean, guys, this is a funny thing. I was working Saturday that one year, and I was like, I asked my boss, hey, listen, there's a game on. Can I work through my lunch break, go home early? I got home early to watch that game, and we got beat 50-7. And I'm just like, oh, cool. I could have just, worked a little bit longer and not worked through my lunch break. Instead, I watched this. That TCU team was amazing, though, and I still truly believe that was either the best or second best team in the country that year. Like, I would have rather seen, if it was them versus Ohio State in the national championship game, I think those were the 2 best teams. Like, that team was loaded.